Healthy Heritage Kitchen. I'm so excited with this particular recipe that I'm making, and it's called a fish stew. It's an alternative to gumbo. During the holidays, a lot of the families make gumbo, and once again, we are celebrating a great Kwanzaa menu, but also with a healthy aspect. What the ingredients I have in here are, you have the onions, you have the green peppers, the red peppers, and the yellow peppers. Traditionally, when you make gumbo, you have what they call the Trinity, which is onions, green peppers, and celery. I have no celery in this, but if you're a fan of celery, of course, you can go and throw the celery into the dish and make it as well. Also, along with this is going to be some cut up fresh garlic, and I'm going to saute it off in some olive oil. If you're not a big fan of olive oil, because olive oil has a very strong taste to it, we call it an acquired taste, particularly when you're sauteing, you can use perhaps canola oil, or you can use a little bit of peanut oil. So I'm going to walk over and we're going to saute these babies off in a pot. Okay, we start out with the olive oil first. And you want to get the pot nice and hot. You know, one of the things when you think of sauteing, it needs to be hot, because what that means is once I add these vegetables in, you want the vegetables to bounce around in the skillet. In this case, the pot. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're bouncing around. And you add your garlic in. And I'm just going to stir these around. Now, what's happening at this stage is I'm binding with my flavors. I'm also making the vegetables a little soft here. And this stage you can go for about 3, 4, up to 5 minutes. Depends on how much product that you have in the in the pan. So you can see the onions start to caramelize a little bit. What's going on there, you're getting a sweet sensation. That's when you see the brownness. But you got to be very careful with the garlic, because you don't want the garlic to turn too brown, because if you do, the garlic turns bitter, and that's not a good thing. It changed the flavor of the dish overall. So just let this saute out. Also, what you can also do, if you have some other flavored vegetables that you like to fold into, particularly if it's a seasonal thing that's going on, you can use maybe some squash. Winter squash goes very well at this stage. Even if you want this dish in the summertime, you can use some zucchini. And keep in mind, when I said olive oil earlier, olive oil is considered one of the most healthy oils that we have on the marketplace. Very, very, very good oil in terms of, you know, low in saturated fat. And also, it doesn't have trans fats in it. And at the same time, because it's a vegetable, it doesn't have any cholesterol. People say, well, what can I use that doesn't have cholesterol? And I always say anything that's plant-based, and that includes margarine. Okay. So you can kind of see the nice colors that we have in here. It's a really big, beautiful bouquet of colors that you have, which is a nice thing here. So at this stage, the vegetables are going to cook down a little bit more, and I'm going to add my second layer of flavors. And what this is going to be are the tomatoes, and these are freshly chopped tomatoes. You can use canned if they're out of season, but one key piece is to keep in mind that if they are canned, what you want to do is use a low sodium, or in some cases a no sodium based chopped diced tomato, because where the canned goods gets us in trouble is that they're very high in sodium intake, and that could alter our diet if we have high blood pressure or we have some kind of heart disease, etc. What I also have here is a vegetable broth, actually. You can also use chicken broth. That came out so early because sometimes I'm always thinking about adding chicken broth into everything. But this case, it's a vegetable broth, and it's a low-sodium chicken broth, also a fat-free version. There are many brands out there that have a fat-free version as well. Just a little bit of sugar, just to cut the acidity out of the tomatoes. Sometimes you taste a dish and you said, oh, it's really kind of burning my tongue. I'm not getting the true flavors that comes out. You add just a little bit of sugar, and it actually balances the flavor of the tomatoes, and you actually get a nice fruity taste of a tomatoes. Most people don't realize what a tomato is. A tomato is actually a fruit versus a vegetable. And what you want to do is just add a little bit of dry white wine. This is going to balance the flavors off completely when you add that in. And what we're going to do is I'm going to march these over to the stove, put them together. Okay. Doesn't have to be in a particular order. In this case, I'm going to add the broth. Add the sugar. And we're going to add the wine here. You don't have to worry about the alcohol. Actually, if you're feeding this to kids, it's like, well, he put wine in the dish. In this case here, what's happening is I've added the wine is actually evaporating out. And so you don't have an alcohol content actually in the dish itself. And so basically what's been left behind is the flavor. And then you have these wonderful freshly chopped tomatoes. And you just want to let that simmer for a little bit. As I like to say, let the flavors marry together, which is a good thing. There we go there. If you have some favorite herbs at this stage, you can also use some herbs. In this case, I decided not to really go with any herbs because I have so much going on in terms of flavor built up with the concentration here. But you can obviously use a little bit of thyme. If it's seasonal, use fresh thyme. If not, if you only have dried, you can use dried. If you concerned about the ratio, always keep in mind that for 1 tablespoon of fresh herbs is equal to 1 teaspoon of dry, because think in mind dry, the concentration is very strong. So this is going to cook for about 20 minutes. And what's happening here, I continue to want my peppers to break down, but at the same time, the flavor is going to be intact, and it needs to bond with the wine. It needs to bond with the broth. And so literally, I would just normally just cover it for 20 minutes. But for time's sake, what I'm going to do is just to add my seafood into the meal. And what we have here, we have the salmon, and then also we have the shrimp. I chose to use the salmon. When most people think of salmon, they think of it as being a very fatty fish. But one of the nice things about salmon is that you have the omega-3 fatty acids, which is anti-cancer fighting agents, and that's in the diet of people. I mean, that's in the diet of the fish. And it's a very, very, very good thing to have if you are incorporating it into a dish, particularly like this. And then you have the shrimp. And so the shrimp is going to marry with the two together. So I'm going to fold this over, bring it back to the stove. Just kind of add it in. Okay. Now, under the assumption that the vegetables have been cooking for about 20 minutes, and at this stage, you just want to fold in that seafood and fish, and you really just want to cover it and let it go for about maybe 10-12 minutes. One of the key things is not to overcook fish or seafood, because again, you're talking about something that's going to be very rubbery. So once it goes for about 10-12 minutes, it should be okay. Some things that you can do to it is, of course, garnish it. You can maybe look at maybe a little bit of lemon to add to it, or add some lemon zest. And then if you want to do a nice presentation, of course, you can add some chopped parsley that's on top. So I do have some that's already prepared that I'm going to ladle up, and we can try it. And it smells so wonderful, by the way. I can't emphasize the odors that's in here. So I'm going to ladle some of this up. I'm going to try it. Oh, just imagine if you were having dinner with me tonight. Okay, and I just want to point out, just look at those beautiful colors. Now, I am having this stew as is, but easily you can incorporate some rice into the dish. If you're not a big fan of rice, you can certainly have some pasta. I would go with maybe a kind of thin grain pasta, or either risotto on base, not maybe a whole lot of Parmesan cheese, because again, we're kind of thinking about healthy eating, and then put these flavors on top. But I think the key will be, if you go with anything, maybe rice would do the trick. So let me try this. I'm hungry here. It's absolutely delicious. All right, what we have next is a wonderful dessert. Of course, we're keeping it in hand with Kwanzaa. It is going to be a delicious pecan coconut pie, and trust me, it will be healthy.